Dr. Paul, thank you for being here today. I just wanted to get your perspective on the DREAM Act, as it can help aid many, many, many kids in this, in this country that are in need of it, and it can help our economy as well.
Well, it can to some degree, but I can't endorse the DREAM Act because there's a lot of money involved. You know, there's a lot of subsidies in there to the tune of billions of dollars. We don't know exactly what it would count. So that's a little bit different than what I'm talking about, that taking more money from one group and giving it to another and think we're going to solve these problems. I really don't think that is the case. But that part in here about trying to work people into the system that have been here, rather than saying that, the attitude that you have barbed wire fences, you have guns on the border, and you round up people and ship them off. Mine is opposite of that, but it does not endorse the principle that we tax another group in order to subsidize the people that have been shortchanged previously. So it's hard to make up for past sins and errors, but to pass the penalty on to another group right now. It's sort of like, there's been abuse of, say, the Indians 200 years ago. Well, I don't think you should be taxed because our forefathers abused the Indians, because I don't think you were guilty. So I'm not for taxation and further expenditures to solve these problems. I want to equal things by recognizing that we all are individuals and we all have equal rights, and we should be treated as equal individuals in our court system.
Yes, Congressman, just a comment and then a question. My question, it will take in any of immigration or path to citizenship, it will take at least 10 years for that person. So therefore, I don't think question that a person will be a citizen right away in order for you to support the program. But secondly, my question to you is, for example, if you would have been a president during 9/11, funded the same way that George Bush did.
Okay, I think I got the question. If I were president, if I had been president on 9/11, what would the response have been? In some ways similar to that, but much more restrained, because I voted for, the power to go and the authority to go after those responsible for 9/11. But I wouldn't have used that power to go into nation buildings, into countries that had nothing to do with 9/11. So that was the excuse, not only to give us the Patriot Act, it was the excuse to invade Iraq that had nothing to it. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and actually they were a pretty good enemy of the Iranians. Now Iraq has been turned over literally because we've turned it into a Shiite nation, which now they are aligned with the Iranians. So the overextension of what happened I was opposed to, but it was proper to go after those people who committed it. I would have talked more about the emphasis on why the attacks occurred, and it wasn't because we're free and prosperous. There's a lot more to it than saying, oh, the only reason they attacked us is we're free and prosperous. Well, why didn't they attack Sweden or Switzerland or someplace? They're free and prosperous. It has a lot to do with the fact that we're in those countries dropping drone missiles on individuals and occupying so many countries. So that is part of it. But also at that time, I introduced a resolution that resurrected a part of our Constitution that I thought would have been an ideal solution, because I recall giving a speech back then, keep your eye on the target, rather than making the target everybody, any place, and make it a justification to go to endless war like we're doing now. What I wanted to do is have them rethink the issue of what they call a letter of marque and reprisal. And this is designated where the Congress writes a letter and they can hire somebody or give the president authority and say, look, what we need to do is go after bin Laden, and we're going to reward you for doing this. And that meant bin Laden would have been the target. But the way we went in the nation building, it took them 10 years to get bin Laden. So it was a lousy deal for us. And so we had to do something. I would have done it differently, but I did vote for the authority. I think they just overused that authority.
Congressman, this election, everybody's talking about jobs and the economy. the reality of this whole issue is unless you have support in both houses, Senate and Congress, how will anything get done to reduce deficit spending, budgets, and help create jobs and take away the regulations that are keeping this country from going back to the manufacturing powerhouse that it was?
Well, you're absolutely right. You have to have a combination of cooperation from House and Senate and the people. Actually, it's the people more important than the House and Senate, because when the people speak out loudly enough, Congress will respond. You know, just recently we had this big argument over Stop Online Piracy Act, which was an invasion and a takeover of our internet. And once the people found out about this, actually the House and the Senate removed it from the docket because they will respond. So for me to win the presidency, I have to get a lot of support from the people, and that sends a powerful message. Also, there would be new members in Congress, but you still have to work with people. Now, this whole philosophy that I have, which is keyed in on the Constitution, I still am convinced it brings people together. For instance, I get a lot of support from Democrats and independents as much as I do from the Republicans, because I take this position on the war issue. I take a different position on civil liberties. I take a different position on, I think it is so abusive of our civil liberties to the minorities when they enforce these drug laws. There's nothing fair about the way they enforce drug laws. So this brings people together. But there are other things that can be done. First thing, I can turn off the war machine. The president's in charge of this. I can stop the wars and bring our troops home and have them spend their money here at home. Also, there's no authority in the Constitution for the executive branch to write laws, and that's what regulations are. So I can start repealing laws because they're all illegal. How about all these executive orders? The president's not supposed to write laws by executive orders and signing statements, so I would have the authority to reverse that. Although, you know, if you want to write a new regulation, the Congress should do this, but I'd be vetoing new legislation. I'd like to see the Federal Register shrink. Nobody can even read it, let alone understand it. The people are victimized by the unbelievable regulations written. I mean, you know the story about three people write to IRS agents to get an explanation on how to fill out their form. You can't even get the IRS agents to understand and give you the same answer. So that could be corrected a lot by a president by just rescinding regulations that came about illegally. But overall, nothing changes in the world if the people's hearts and minds don't change. But this is where I'm optimistic. This is what I'm sensing around the country today, is people are sensing this whole issue of liberty is important. Government can't solve our problems. We have too many wars. We have to undertake a thorough study of the Federal Reserve System, because as long as they're going to print money, they're going to print money. And as long as they do this, they're going to get us into mischief, spend money. You're supposed to be spending the money, the people, not the government. And they're not allowed to counterfeit the money because it's prohibited by the Constitution.
This will be our last question.
Dr. Paul, how can we best continue to spread your message of liberty after 2012? No matter what happens, we want to keep this message of liberty growing and keep it alive. So how can we best do that? That's my question to you.
Well, the way you keep the message of liberty continuing, you have individuals who understand that message, they get engaged, and they get active. But for me to say what you should do wouldn't be the answer at all, because everybody has a responsibility, everybody has different talents. The most important part overall, and a lot of people give me a lot of credit for bringing this freedom movement to life, but really not. I am just sort of a symbol of what's happened in the last 3 or 4 or 5 decades on what's happening intellectually, because Austrian economics and sound money is being studied, the whole idea of individual liberty and restudying the Constitution, it's come about. So it's an intellectual matter. You might like to be a teacher. You might like to be a journalist. I'd like to run into some journalists that understood Austrian economics and ask me the right questions. But being a teacher and an activist supporting candidates, it's amazing what happened after 4 years ago. And it started low then, it's growing exponentially. For instance, in Iowa, they have a central committee. 4 years ago, I had no representation on the central committee. This year, out of 17, 5 of them were supporters of the freedom movement. So things happen. There's no central organization. If it's an idea whose time has come, it will go through infiltration. And the greatest tool is the enthusiasm of the young people and the internet. It is moving, and the government can't stop this. Even if they try to suppress the internet, believe me, the freedom movement is alive and well. And the main reason why it's so popular is such a strong recognition now of the failure of government. Just think of all the good intentions of giving everybody a free house. And the house would go up in value forever, and you could borrow on it and increase your consumer spending. It ended because it was a failed policy. So the evidence is so clear, so the opportunity is there for all and every one of us. Who knows, you may be running for Congress or something like that someday. Thank you very much.
The Congressman, first of all, thank you for coming, and I do thank the Congressman for accepting our invitation. He's going to be here to our left. He'll take pictures with a few of you. Do not overwhelm the matter, but he will take time to take a few pictures. Again, thank you so much for coming. Muy buenos días.